All right, welcome back, everybody. Clearwater Jazz Holiday Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. Thank you for being with us again. My name is Steve Weinberger. I'm the CEO of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, and we've got another great one today, a conversation with Joel Frahm, with the great Jeremy Carter, who's with us today as well. Everybody is muted for the courtesy of the session, but if you have questions, please use the chat feature and I'll help moderate that, get those questions to Joel and to Jeremy. And we really appreciate everybody following along these Young Lions Jazz Master virtual sessions. After these live recordings, we archive them in the studio through www.clearwaterjazz.com, the education and outreach section. That resource is brought to you by Blue Water Wealth Management at Steward Partners and our friends at Duke Energy. And if you'd rather listen than watch, well, we do that too through our podcast, the Young Lions Podcast. You could search it wherever you stream. It's accessible on Google and Spotify and Apple Music and all that good stuff. And I think we just hit over 3,000 total plays in just a few months, all over the United States and even outside of the United States. And we're really excited about that. That resource is brought to you by MarineMax Clearwater. And all of these upcoming sessions you can find at clearwaterjazz.com in the education and outreach section. So thank you for helping to make this special. We're so excited to have Jeremy and Joel with us today as part of this continuing Conversation With series. Jeremy's got 3 of them this week. We did an amazing one with Sam Dillon yesterday. We've got Joel with us today. Really excited. Let me tell you a little bit about Jeremy, and I'm going to turn it right over to these two. So Jeremy is one of the most sought-after saxophonists around. Such an incredible performer. He has traveled all over the world recording and sharing the stage with some of today's top acts, and he's got several sold-out shows to his credit here in the Tampa Bay area, including one with us at part of our Wanderlust series a couple weeks ago. Just knocked it out of the park, man. It was so much fun. Jeremy Carter, rubber band, just killing it, and we are so excited to have him. But Jeremy's been such a great and inspiring presence with Clearwater Jazz Education and Outreach, part of our History of Jazz Education Outreach program in the schools, our My Journey with Jazz program in neighborhood family centers and more economically challenged pockets of our community, and of course, these Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. And today, his guest is Joel Frahm, a regular on the New York City club circuit, award-winning saxophonist. Joel Frahm. I'm going to let Jeremy talk a little bit about Joel's experiences, which are great. And I just can't thank you both enough for being a special part of this. I'm going to turn it over to you guys. The stage is all yours.
Thanks, Steve.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Steve. What an introduction. Wow, I don't know what to do after that.
Thank you and good night.
Yeah, right. No, we're so delighted to have Joel Frahm here with us for our Clearwater Jazz Holiday Education and Outreach program. I'll try to keep this short. I'll try not to go into my fanboy mode, but
man,
I'm a huge fan of Joel's. If you haven't heard his music, please do check it out. I mean, just his ability to manipulate time, the harmonic presence. I mean, just the vocabulary, the soul, the feel. I mean, all elements of music. He's just such a disciple of what this thing is supposed to be about. And I've been a huge fan of Joel's work for such a long time. So thank you so much, Joel.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's really nice. Really, thank you. Appreciate it.
I don't know if you remember how we met initially.
I'm trying to. Did we meet in North Carolina?
No, up in New York.
Where was it that we met?
It was at Fat Cat. At
Fat Cat.
Yeah.
Man, you're gonna have to remind me though.
Okay, yeah. So I was there playing with Greg Glassman and Stacy and the boys, and and you come in like off of a gig. You still have your tux on.
Oh man,
like, you know what I mean? And like your tenor and like your doubles and all your stuff.
Yeah. And
I'm just like, man, oh my God, you know. And then we started talking, man, and then we ended up playing together. You invited me to play with you at La Lanterna.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Now, okay, yeah.
With Frank Bazzelli, and he ended up coming through.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, man, that experience was just amazing. I mean, me and Sam were talking about it yesterday, and just to bring everybody in that's listening, Joel is, he's one of the best guys. He's right up there at the top. Like when you see him coming out, a lot of guys in New York, they don't come out. When you see Joel hanging out at the clubs, it's like Michael Jordan coming down and play pickup ball at the rec league afterwards. This is
oh man, you're gonna make me turn red, man.
And this, that just speaks to his, love for the thing. I mean, when you hear him play, you can hear the passion, you can hear the love, you can hear the drive. And so, yeah, man, that was something that I was always really, really struck by. I remember when we met, I was talking about the Navigator album, your second album. Mm-hmm. I was like, that was like a soundtrack at that point, like right around 99, 2000, 2001. I was developing a lot. I mean, that was a big period of development for me. Yep. And that was a CD that was heavy in rotation.
Anytime. Oh man, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, man.
Sure.
So, just to dive into it, to get a few things out of the way, I want to talk about your equipment a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So you obviously play sixes.
Actually, I do, but I've recently been playing. This is my new super balanced action.
Oh, baby.
So yeah, it's
Coltrane era one.
It's I don't even know. It's a 34,000, so I don't know what year that makes it. It's a little bit earlier.
Yeah,
actually, 34,000 is probably in the 40s, maybe. I'm not even sure.
I'm not really exactly sure.
In any case, but it's been this, all the non-saxophonists you can tune out at this point. But
yeah, we're about to sax geek out a little bit.
It was relacquered, but it was a factory relacquer on this horn, and I found it at John Ledbetter's place in New York. He had this on the wall, and I was there one day, and I happened to have my backup Mark VI with me. And I played this horn, and I liked it so much, I traded my backup Mark VI for this horn.
Wow.
So that's what I've been playing on recently. It's really nice because in a way it's a change up from playing a six. It's like a very, very different feel and in a way a softer sound. It's nice to have one six and one SBA because I can kind of choose which direction I want to go on a given day,
right?
Because they both have strengths that are different,
Yeah. What year is the Mark VI you playing on?
The Mark VI, it's a 60,000, so that would make it like, I think it's 1954 or 1955 maybe.
Yeah, really early, like almost.
It's like transition. It's like first or second year, yeah.
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 Very cool.
So, and then the rest of the setup today, and this is, I've been playing this for a few months now, because I've become affiliated with the Boston Sax Shop, Jack Finucane up there.
Yeah.
And so he's got this new S series mouthpiece, which is similar to a Selmer Soloist. It's a 7-star mouthpiece. He's got this nice brass ligature that he makes, really, really nice, and then his reeds. And it's like it's a 7-star mouthpiece with right now it's a 3.5 reed on there.
So, right. His looks like his ligature too, right?
His ligature too. Yeah.
I recently saw you playing on metal. Like, you usually hover around the 7-star area?
Yeah, for the most part, I would say for the past 3 or 4 years, I've been hovering around the 7-star area. It's been that seems to be a fairly comfort zone for me, and it's usually anywhere between 7-star and 9. For a while I was playing like 8s and 9s.
Wow.
And I even had for a while I was going through this phase where I was playing the Francois Louis, the biggest Francois Louis Spectruoso. I was playing like the big huge 135 chamber or whatever it is. Right. I mean 135 tip opening or whatever it is, and that was cool too, but I just find that for my own expression, that 7-star allows the ease that I need pretty much to be flexible, and it doesn't lock me into one sound or another. It's like it's kind of down the middle, so I can really mold the sound that I the way that I want to,
Right. Yeah, I mean, you always sound great no matter what you're playing. Whether it's metal or the rubber pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at a certain point, they always say, it's the archer, not the arrow. So I think ultimately, at this point, I've been playing since I was 13, so that's what, 37 years or 38 years. And at a certain point, no matter what mouthpiece I put on, even though there's always the promise that it's going to be the Holy Grail, it's pretty much you end up sounding the same.
Right.
At a certain point you have your sound, and you can get that sound pretty much from almost anything. So
Yeah. So what are you shedding, right? I know we all go through phases. Like, what are you digging on nowadays when you go to listen?
yeah, well, I mean, the things that I really like listening to these days, I've been checking out. I've been listening a lot to Lester Young again. I've been going back to I love the Lester Young stuff with Basie, with the big band.
Right.
So I've been listening to stuff like Lady Be Good and Taxi War Dance and all the old charts that he played on, and there's something. It's interesting because when I first started playing, and not when I first started playing, but when I first discovered jazz, I was probably around 16 years old, and people introduced me to Charlie Parker. And as soon as I heard Charlie Parker, it was like, man, that was religious for me. I mean, I was just like, that was a game changer, of course, as it is for almost everybody who's interested in playing the music. And back then, I remember hearing Lester Young, and I didn't get it. Like when I first heard Lester Young, I was like, man, I don't know, I just don't, I don't feel it like I do with Charlie Parker. And then as the years went by, like something just sort of. I kept gravitating back to listen to Lester over and over and over again, and then I realized, oh man, this is the hippest stuff. It's
Right.
like, it's just the rhythm, the just the inventiveness, the lyricality, like the lyricism, all of those things in Lester's playing just completely knocked me out at this point. So Lester's has become a huge hero for me, even though you might not hear it.
Right.
You might not hear it explicitly in my playing, but I've just really come to love Lester's sound.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's definitely been on the menu lately. And other than that, I've been just going back and discovering records that I hadn't listened to in a long time, and going back to listen to artists that. Sometimes I'll be listening to the jazz radio and something will come on that I had forgotten about,
Right.
I remember the other day, what was it? I think it was maybe Sonny Clark came on the radio, and I hadn't heard Sonny Clark in a long time, and I don't even remember what record, but it's probably one of those records with Philly Joe or Art Taylor. I'm not even sure, but it was so swinging, and I was just like, man,
Yeah.
Sonny Clark, and so I had to go back and check out some Sonny Clark, and also that happens with like Ahmad Jamal. I'm a big fan of piano trios too, so I've been listening to Ahmad Jamal, Sonny Clark, Paul Bley, a lot of the older Nat Cole, a lot of the older piano trios. So it seems as the older I get, the earlier in jazz my taste becomes.
Right.
I keep going older and older and older music, and I'm going to end up listening to only Louis Armstrong pretty soon.
Right. I remember Brantford talking about that. Like when he came back to New York, guys were like, "Oh man, you sound good. What you been listening to? Like Lester and Sidney Bechet and like all the old stuff. It's that you can hear the difference like harmonically between things that guys are doing now, and some things just weren't doing back then.
Well, yeah, and it's almost like it's so old at this point that it's new again.
Right.
Because there's a whole lot of people, students especially, that that are into they'll listen to Mark Turner, Chris Potter, like I'm talking specifically about saxophone students for the most part, but which is great, and those guys are great, but they don't necessarily know the lineage of what led up to that. So So when I introduce them to the kind of like, do a backwards sort of like, backwards regression towards the beginning of the music, it kind of opens their eyes, because they realize, oh man, like I didn't know about this guy, Lockjaw Davis. I didn't know about this guy, Gene Ammons. I didn't know about this guy, there's just so many in the lineage that they're not aware of.
Right.
Coleman Hawkins, even they don't know. So I get excited about that when I can introduce someone to those players when they haven't experienced it. That can be really a very important moment for my students. So so I feel like the fact that language is significantly different, as you just said, like it's got its own vernacular, it's got its own style of phrasing, its own harmonic context, it's and its own feeling, and also it's got brevity.
Right.
That's the other thing I like about it, is that you listen to those old records, they said what they had to say in a short period of time. So every time you listen to a Lester Young solo or a Coleman Hawkins solo, generally, or a Louis Armstrong solo for that matter, generally you're going to hear something very brief, and it's almost like a little gem. It's almost like this little thing that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's really narratively sound, and it's not just meandering for the sake of meandering. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So those are some of the reasons that I really like that earlier jazz, is that it instills those qualities in my playing too when I study that stuff.
Right. You were talking about piano players, and getting ready for this, I was going through some of your older records, and I was listening to you, and some of the guys you named, I heard, I was like, man, that's kind of like an Ahmad Jamal thing. And then I heard some Chick stuff.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of articulating like Chick, and then I'm like, man, I heard a lot of stuff in there. And I feel like that's one of the things that I was always so impressed by in your playing, like the vocabulary and just the ability to not only like play the lines, as play the notes as you were like, but really get into like the dynamics of the phrase.
Right.
I was really struck by, your ability to do that. And also, like I said, the vocabulary, like you'll quote something, you'll introduce something and just in a way that's so casual, and it just always seems so effortless. And I think that's, cats should really be checking you out for that type of study. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's always been high on my priority list. Is that I've always been attracted to the musicians, the improvisers, that when you listen to them, it feels like it's second nature. So. I always use this example with my students. I often will use video and archival footage in my lessons, because I want them to see what these players look like, and not just saxophonists either. So one of the ones that I love to use is I don't know, and probably you've seen it, but if not, you can find it on YouTube. It's a black and white video of the Wes Montgomery quintet with Harold Mayburn and Jimmy Lovelace, and it might be Arthur Harper on bass, and Wes playing guitar, and they're playing his tune Jingles. If you've ever heard Wes Montgomery tune Jingles, which is tricky. It's like this tricky kind of like sort of head with lots of stops and starts, and when you watch that. When I first watched it, what really struck me is that you hear Wes playing this intricate line and then blowing this beautiful solo over this kind of challenging tune, and he's got this big smile on his face, like he could be reading the Sunday newspaper doing the jumble. You know what I mean? Like he looks so he's like relaxed, like, yeah, man, no big deal. But what he's doing is like really advanced and incredible. So I'm always struck by those players when I see someone that has depth and ease at the same time. To me, that's the highest level. That's what I'm shooting for all the time. I mean, that's what Bird was like too. I mean, Bird, obviously Bird had a gift too, but he worked really hard at it. And, he got to the point where when you listen to Bird, it feels like, it doesn't feel labored, it feels light, So when you listen to Bird, it's almost like, he's blowing love letters at people. Here you go. You know, it's just it's very live and very light. So that's the kind of thing that I'm attracted to that, and I'm attracted to musicians that feel that way when they play.
Right.
But that's why that's certainly something that I value very highly.
Yeah. Kind of like when you listen to Monk, there's that childlike playfulness about the thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's really hip. So I want to get a chance to play with you a little bit.
Sure.
But I'm gonna just, before we do that, I'm just gonna throw out a couple people, because we were talking about the effortless and some of the people that I know you've worked with and been around. I'm just gonna throw out a name and then just give me your initial thoughts.
Sure.
Ari Honig.
Oh wow. Well, we just played the other night.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, Ari is brilliant, thorough, humorous, virtuoso, rhythmic master on the deepest level.
Dave Kikowski.
Dave Kikowski is a true exponent of the music, you know, coming from Herbie and Chick Corea and all of those great players of the '60s, and he's in that category. And I would also say that for people who don't know, he's an astonishing improviser. But what also impresses me equally, if not even more than that, is his compositional skill. David, I went on tour with Dave Kikowski in the early 2000s with his quartet in Italy, and I got to learn his compositions. And I'll tell you what, I was so floored by his writing.
Yeah.
I think he's a brilliant composer, and I think, you know, obviously more people should know about Dave.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people sleep on him. They don't really.
They don't know how heavy he is. Yeah, I know.
Really heavy.
Yeah.
Brad Meldau.
Yeah, well, that's my homeboy. I mean, you know, Brad and I, we met when we were 15 in high school, and you know, he's pretty remarkable, because even before either of us knew really anything about the history of the music, I remember first seeing him at about 15 years old just sit down at the piano, and he could just improvise. Now, he didn't have a whole lot of jazz vocabulary together or anything like that, but he would just sit and make stuff up at the piano, and it would just pour out of him, you know.
Right.
And it was really the first time I had ever encountered a musician, a peer of mine, that just had this whatever gift that is, that just allowed him to, whatever would come into his head, it would just go out onto the keyboard.
Yeah.
And he's a special case, because you know, there are just that kind of gift and that kind of depth of creativity and flow doesn't come along that often. And so I felt very, very lucky to be around a musician like that. At the age that I was,
Right.
You know, I felt that way about Chris Potter too. You know, who was my roommate in college.
Right. That was one of the other names I was going to mention.
Yeah. So I was, you know, I mean, I was surrounded by, you know, very heavy dudes at an early age, and it was great for me, and it was daunting too, because, you know, we're all peers, and we all, you know, we're all kind of a little bit competitive with one another. We all want to do our best, and but in a way, you know, being on stage with those guys and getting my butt kicked a little bit was great for me. I mean, it was you know, it was a rite of passage, and you know, Josh Redman did that for me too. I remember playing a session with Josh Redman when I was about 23, 24 years old, and he had just won the Monk competition, and we played this session down in a basement in Brooklyn. And man, he just wiped the floor with me, and you know what? It was cool because it was a really nice rhythm section. I think actually that's one of the times first times he met Brad. It was he was before he was in his band, and you know, after the session, I was hurting a little bit, but I went home, and I was so inspired just because I loved his sound and his phrasing, and so I practiced really, really hard after that.
Right.
And that was the great thing about New York at that time, is that there were all of these peers who were really, really strong. And, it was a little bit sink or swim, which is what I was looking for. That's why I had moved here in the first place, was
Right.
that experience.
It's still true today, I guess,
Yeah.
with the newer generation.
That's true, no doubt about it. I mean, I just got a book in the mail, in email. I don't know if you know Ben Solomon.
Yeah, I saw that the chromatic pattern thing.
Yeah, Chromatophores.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
he just wrote this incredible book, full of amazing harmonic, melodic material. And he's another guy that just at a very young age just subsumed so much of Coltrane's language, and is just sounding so great. And I mean, guys like Tavon Pennicott and Stacey Dillard, and there's so many guys out there that I really admire. Emmanuel Wilkins. I mean, Emmanuel Wilkins freaks me out, man. I mean, I played with him up in Washington State with at the Port Townsend Jazz Workshop. It's John Clayton's workshop. And man,
Right.
Emmanuel Wilkins just played some stuff. I was like, man, I've never heard that before. What is that? Can I have a lesson with you?
No, he's cooking. Tucker Antel, he's another guy.
Oh, Tucker's incredible too. Yeah, I mean, so there's this. The thing is that the music is in good hands. I mean, the actual music. I have no worries about where the music is going. The only thing I worry about is like the actual, where's the money going to come from?
Right? Because the record companies aren't selling anymore, on the streaming. You don't really, seriously.
So.
And now the club. So you say you've been playing a little bit. Like, what have you been up to?
Well, let's see. In the last week or so, I actually did two Smalls, broadcasts. I did one with Ari Honig and Charles Owens, the tenor player, and Alex Claffey, and actually Omer Avital sat in with us on that one. And then the second one was with my friend Tom Dempsey, Tim Ferguson, and McClinty Hunter on drums, who really played his ass off too. Yeah. So those were the two Smalls dates that I did. I don't have too much for the rest of the year. I'm doing one more on the 20th with this great trumpet player Carol Morgan. I think Matt Wilson is on that, and Martin Wind.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be at Smalls on the 20th. But other than that, I've been writing a book. I'm about 5 or 6 chapters into a book that is going to be. Part of it is going to be autobiographical, and part of it is going to be musical exercises. So the way I'm doing it is I'm talking about kind of all of the eras of my playing that, each chapter maybe covers a few years and talks about what I was thinking about at that time with some of my anecdotal experiences. And then at the end of each chapter, there will be exercises that pertain to that period of time, that are, germane to that period of time. So that's the other thing that I'm moving.
Are you?
At this, yeah.
Out of New York or just
out of New York? Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm going up to my folks' place for a few months until I figure out where I'm going to go next. So it's a big change for me after 31 years. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to end up next, but I've applied for some jobs, and we'll see where I go. I'm not
hopefully somewhere warm. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice too. Well, I'm considering warm places, so we'll see.
Maybe Florida.
Well, I can't talk about it, but that is a possibility.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding, man. Yeah, it would be great to have you down here, man.
Yeah.
So I'd like to maybe get to play a little bit.
Yes.
I don't know what are you thinking?
I don't know. You want to just play a blues with me or something like that?
Sure.
For now?
Yeah.
So how are we gonna? I don't know.
I don't know how this is gonna sync up. Yeah, maybe we could trade 12s or trade 4s.
I think that's the good way to do it, is if we trade. Yeah. So
okay.
Why don't we try and play ahead together?
Okay.
We'll see if that works. Although actually on Zoom there's always like a little thing.
Right. A little latency.
Yeah, but with what head do you like?
Maybe just Blue Monk.
Yeah. What key?
B flat.
Okay.
1 down.
You got it, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, the lag makes it a little tricky, but that's cool.
Yeah, man.
Man, Jeremy, you sound fantastic.
Thanks, man. You too.
Yeah, really fantastic. Just sounds so great, man. I really hope that when this is all over, I can get down there. Maybe we can do a 2-tenor gig together. That would really be fun.
Dude, that would just I don't even know what to say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. I mean, if maybe Clearwater can do something. Maybe we can try and figure
Steve,
out a way.
You hear that, Steve?
Oh, I'm listening loud and clear, man. Taking notes. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I would really like that. I mean, I love playing 2 tenors anyway. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I would love to come down and play with you for sure.
Oh man, that means a lot. I saw you doing some stuff with Charles Owens. That was like really, really hip.
Oh yeah. You know, we made that Smalls record together, and Charles and I go way back. I mean, you know, we were in Omer Avital's band together back in the '90s, and you know, that was when the first iteration of Smalls, when Smalls first opened up, I think in '94. It was around maybe 1998 that Omer had the band, and so many great saxophonists went through that band. I mean, Greg Tardy, and you know, Mark Turner, Myron Walden, Jay Collins, and Grant Stewart, and me and Charles Owens, Jimmy Green. You know, so there were a ton of us that all sort of graduated through Omer's band, and at different times. And Charles and I really have struck up have had a beautiful friendship for many years now.
Yeah, there was one other name, a really important name I forgot to mention when I was doing the rapid fire thing there. Just a pillar of the New York scene, Spike Wilner.
Oh well, what can you say about Spike? I mean, Spike is the savior of jazz in New York City right now. I mean, he really is. You know, I don't think that's too much of a hyperbole because, you know, it's always been a struggle for clubs to survive in New York, and he not only did he take over that club and create Mesro too and allow it to survive, but he's really just led the entire scene with such dedication and love that it's you know, those places are basically like a safe haven for all jazz musicians in the world. I mean, it's the place where at least people of my generation and younger, for the most part, and even older cats too, you know, that's the place where you head when you want to hang all night and hear the music. And you know, it's in the tradition of Bradley's, and it's in the tradition of the old school clubs that used to be here, where they had a speakeasy vibe, and people would come, and it was social too, and not just get them in, get them out, you know, for the next set.
Right.
It's you know, it's a place where young musicians can come and really be mentored by the older guard, and Spike is incredible. I mean, I can't say enough about him because he really and truly has kept the jazz scene alive in New York.
Yeah. Yeah, he's you know, I just saw the Jazz Standard closed. And there's been a lot of other clubs that have just been suffering and struggling to maintain themselves.
That's right.
In this environment. So it's really good to see Spike doing everything that he's doing for all the cats, you know, just creating a space for, you know, obviously for guys to come and make a little bread, but also to, you know, come and fellowship and have that experience of playing, because I mean, it's the lifeblood for a lot of the cats, you know. It's not just a financial loss, you know what I mean?
No, that's the thing is, you know, I mean, as jazz musicians, we need to have places to ply our trade. I mean, we need to have places to develop our ideas and have you know, have the space to let that happen organically, and Smalls is one of the last places in New York City that really allows that in that way.
Right. So, on a musical note, let's say you get a Dropbox folder with just all these charts and all these tunes. What's the first thing you're gonna do when you start shedding it? You know what I mean? For a cat that's, you know, going to, you know, prepare for a group, that you never played for or with, you know what I mean? You don't have that relationship built up. What's the first thing you do when you get your music?
Well, the first thing that I do, if possible, well, first I'll print it out.
Right.
That's number one.
Right.
Make sure that there's ink in the printer.
Right.
I print it out, and then after I print it out, what I like to do generally is, if hopefully when people send reference tracks. So I before the horn even comes out, I like to listen to whatever they've sent me. If they've sent me even like a MIDI track, or if they sent me a video of a performance that they did at some point, that's very helpful to me to hear it first, you know,
Right.
because then I can watch along on the chart as I'm listening to it before I even put the horn in my mouth, and get an idea of where the problem areas are going to be for me. You know,
Right.
so I take an overview first. So in other words, I listen to the whole thing. I'll take a pencil and make marks. Oh, this section's going to be tricky. That section's going to be tricky. You know, and make marks for myself through the chart. And then I'll turn the recording off, and I'll go through the whole thing slowly. You know, my big thing has always been practicing slowly and practicing in small increments. So if someone sends me a bunch of music, you know, I'm not going to try and like start at the beginning of the chart and go all the way through to the end and do that 10 times. I'm gonna focus in on, you know, the 5 or 6 things that I know are going to be tricky for me, and then I just put those things under a microscope.
Right.
And I practice them very, very slowly, without any affectation, just very evenly, almost like a classical player would prepare an etude or
Right.
something like that. So I do it very, very step by step, little baby steps, you know, so yeah, so I would say, you know, melody is first, making sure that I have all the notes under my fingers, you know, making sure that I can play it up to tempo. And then after that, it's, you know, if there's a solo, then I'll look at the chord changes and say, okay, I'll take a few passes, just on my own, you know, maybe probably slowly at first through the chord changes to try and find some avenues that seem that please me, you know, find some melodies that work through the chord changes that I like.
Right.
And so I'll spend maybe an hour doing that too on each chart, and that's basically it. I mean the big takeaway from the way I prepare for gigs is you know, is just doing it slowly and patiently.
Right.
You know, slow. You know, just doing it really without skipping ahead before something is really done. You know, so I'd really try and take it step by step and really absorb each thing thoroughly before I move on.
Right. And more specifically, when you're just generally trying to work on the saxophone, like whenever I teach them, I always try to break it down into like 5 components. I always talk about rhythm, obviously, harmony, melody, dynamics, and then your overall sound concept.
Right.
When you're working on these, I mean, like, would you like put on, if you want to work on articulation, would you just put on a Johnny Griffin record and be like, okay?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think, you know, the way
You know what I mean?
well, the way I practice is, you know, I'm probably not as organized in a certain sense as a lot of guys were. You know, I mean, like, I know that certain guys have, you know, like a very you know, sort of like list of things that they cross off every day. Okay, I did this, I did that, I did this. And in my case, it was more like, you know, I would hear someone solo and I would say, oh, I want to know what that person is doing. So I'd write out the solo. I transcribed a lot.
Right.
And so all of those other aspects kind of come along with that, because they're all included in the transcriptions that I'm working on. So, you know, you're right. If I transcribe a Johnny Griffin solo, I know that I'm gonna emulate, you know, his sound, his time, his articulation, all of those things, and I'm gonna try and get as close to it as possible. It's like, you know, like say a young piano player listening to Glenn Gould play the Goldberg variations. You know, maybe, you know, you use that as sort of an archetype and a template for what you're doing. And so, you know, when I was much younger, I was doing that a lot. I was taking different solos, like I took a Johnny Griffin solo, or a Train solo, or a Stan Getz solo, or whatever it might be, or even like a Keith Jarrett solo or a Ahmad Jamal solo. And I would really try and get as close as possible to the original. And so that was it was more along those lines of the oral tradition of trying to emulate orally what's going on, and not necessarily. And then the theory and the analysis came later.
Right.
The theory came when I went to college and I had classes and I was like, oh, that's a half diminished chord, or oh, that's the low crane scale, or oh, that's this, that's that, and I was kind of filling the blanks after the fact.
Right.
So yeah. So when I practice, sorry.
It's all right.
So when I practice, it generally is more song based. So I'm oftentimes I'm taking a standard and I'm just playing 20, 30, 40 choruses on a standard on my own. Oftentimes not with a play along. I'm not a huge fan of play alongs.
Right.
And I'll do it myself or with a metronome. And I'll stop and figure out along the way, like I'll find the places that I feel like that they need work. Like I'll find progressions that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not as strong in this part of the song as I am in that part of the song. And so I'll figure out a few ways to get through the tricky parts of the song for me,
right.
and invent my own vocabulary or steal it, whatever it's going to be.
Right. We all do that.
Yeah.
We all do that.
Yeah.
So, is there any way I can get you to play another tune before we get out of here?
Of course. Yeah. What would you like to play?
I don't know. I heard you doing No Greater Love.
Sure. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Let's just trade choruses on this one when we get to it. But and why don't you? I'll tell you what. Just to avoid confusion, why don't you play the head in? I'll play the head out.
Okay.
So why don't you take the head in and play the first chorus, and then we'll trade choruses, and then I'll play the head on the way out.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Beautiful playing, Jeremy. You sound better than ever, man. You sound so great.
Thank you, man. That means a lot coming from
you. I mean it. Just beautiful sound, really just elegant flow, man. It's really, really lovely.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, Steve, I was wondering if you had any questions that people chimed in with.
I don't see. I see a comment from Anita. She says, "This was such a treat. Thank you. Looking forward to the Two Tenor show."
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. We got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The wheels are turning already. You know, Joel, we were talking yesterday. You know, a big part of the culture of Clearwater Jazz tradition is these performance opportunities that we try to create for young lions to play with more established musicians, and we know the value there. But there's a lot of young students, high school age students, that participate in these programs that we do in a non-pandemic year, where we bring everybody together, and there's some real great shared experiences with university educators and local professionals and students, and these adapted virtual programs are taking the place of it this year. But thinking back to those days, what thoughts or maybe some guidance do you have for high school students at that level that are really just now kind of, they're in it now? What thoughts do you have for them to keep them inspired and on the path of their own jazz journey?
I think it's important to remember that that this music is social, that it's not just about only being in the practice room by yourself all the time. And of course, right now is sort of the irony of my statement right there is very poignant, because, you know, none of us can really be very close to one another in the same room. But ultimately, the ideal, I think, as a young musician, is to be getting together with your peers as often as you can, having jam sessions, learning songs together, listening to records together. The more it can be an activity where it's about the group and not just about the individual, that is what I would suggest for young musicians. Is to, you know, I had an older musician tell me once, if you want to learn how to play jazz, you have to immerse yourself in jazz. You have to immerse yourself in the music. You have to, immerse yourself in listening. You have to immerse yourself in finding opportunities to play wherever they might be. So when I was in my teens and 20s, every day I was hungry to play. I was always looking for an opportunity to find a rhythm section to play with somewhere. And so that would be my biggest recommendation is just to keep the music social. Don't let it just be an insular vibe. You want to create with your friends. You want to create with your peers. And when you have the opportunity to do it, you also want to go and see your heroes play as much as you possibly can, so that you can keep that lineage alive. That you can, go and get that feeling that you can only get from hearing someone that you admire, and go to see them play. Come up and say hello. Buy their CD. Get them to give you an autograph. Get to know them. Take a lesson. The more that you can stay engaged in whatever way you can as a young jazz artist, that's going to pay dividends down the line. And so, and that's what it's all about. I have to say, I probably love doing this and teaching in general nearly as much as I do as being on stage. I'm one of those guys that I don't really separate between the two. I don't look at teaching as like, oh, I have to teach, in order to make a living. I love teaching. I love being with young students, or older students, especially if they have a real passion for the music, and if they, if they're people that, obviously have caught the bug and have a real love for bebop and all of the great styles of jazz, then I'm in. I'm all the way there. So, I would just, for young musicians out there, if they're listening, if you want to learn how to play this music, it's, you just got to listen to a lot of it. Run towards the people that you like to listen to. Don't forget the singers out there. Don't forget the vocalists. I learned as much from Billie Holiday as I did from John Coltrane. So, and that's the truth. I learned a ton from all the different vocalists that I listened to. So that's important too. Learn the words, learn the lyrics of the songs. It's important. I think, the last thing I'll say, don't forget to have fun when you play. It's supposed to be fun. So many times, and I've been guilty of this in the past too. I'm getting better at it. I'm getting older, and I realize that I was, the sort of fallacy of trying to take life too seriously. And now, when I go on stage, I don't sweat it nearly as much if my read is bad. I don't worry about technical things the way I used to. I mean, obviously, I've got a lot of technique because I worked on it. But at a certain point, you got to let it go, and you just got to get up there and play and have a good time. And that's an aspect that doesn't often get talked about, but I want all the young musicians out there to remember that this music is supposed to be a celebration. It's supposed to be fun. As Johnny Griffin said, jazz is about celebrating and feeling good in spite of our circumstances. Yeah. He says that's what the blues and jazz is all about. So, what could be more apt than to get a little wisdom from Johnny Griffin in these times of this pandemic? I mean, jazz has to survive because, otherwise what is life about?
Yeah, no, what a great response. Some really, really wonderful feedback. Let me ask you a little bit about, talk about listening, strategic listening, and, there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't all the streaming music when, we were all growing up, and it's so overwhelming now. Yes, there are all these resources and tools out there, but maybe let's focus on a young saxophone player. Do you have any thoughts about where are some good places to start? From the Jazz Holiday Foundation standpoint, we have some resources that talk about the appreciation of the art form. We have virtual resources that highlight legends of jazz, and we try to highlight some contemporary standouts to try to educate and inspire. But do you have any very specific suggestions for young saxophone players of what to watch, what to listen to now?
Sure. Well, yeah, this could be a long answer, but I mean, my first response to that is start anywhere. But if you want to get really specific, I mean, I can tell you where I started. I mean, I got turned on when I was 16 years old. On my 16th birthday, my high school big band bought me 6 jazz recordings, which was the best birthday present I ever got. And those jazz records were Charlie Parker's Swedish Schnapps, Horace Silver, Sterling Silver, Art Blakey, Ugetsu, Miles Davis, the new Miles Davis Quintet, that's 4, Eastern Rebellion 2, which is Cedar Walton with Bob Berg, and Phil Wood's Rites of Swing. So those are the 6 that the 6, and it was records that they bought me. So that was my kind of entry point, and I have to say that all of those records in different ways really played an important role for me because, first of all, I wore them out. I mean, I brought them home, and I was so touched by the gesture. And the first one that I wore out was Bird. The first one that I wore out was Swedish Schnapps. You know, I put that on, and you know, some track. I think if I'm not mistaken, some tracks have a young Red Rodney, and some tracks have a young Miles Davis. And so immediately I heard like the difference between the trumpet players on the record. You know, I was like, oh, this guy sounds different than the other guy, you know, but mostly I was listening to Bird and just listening to, you know, there's a couple takes of like She Wrote, and there's a couple takes of a couple different tunes on that record, so you get to hear, you know, different passes of Bird improvising on different songs, and that, you know, and so I became really obsessed with Charlie Parker's language at that time, and I would listen to those recordings, and I would pick off little licks off the recording, and I would just sit obsessively practicing one Bird line over and over and over again. And then when I really had it in all tempos, I would take it into a different key. And I did this a lot when I was in high school. I mean, I would take, you know, mainly it was just Charlie Parker lines at first, and I would take them through different keys, and then I had another teacher. I ended up going to summer camp at Eastman School of Music when I was 17, and I had a great teacher. He's a great saxophonist, still on the scene. His name is Tom Christensen, and he introduced me to Sonny Rollins. He didn't introduce me to him. I wish I had met him, but he introduced me to the Sonny Rollins record, Live at the Village Vanguard, or One Night at the Village Vanguard, and with Elvin Jones and Wilbur Ware. And he said, I want you to write down the way Sonny plays the melody and his solo on Softly as in Morning Sunrise. And so I did that, and then as soon as I did that, and then he also played me Blue 7, which was one of Sonny's most famous blues solos, and I memorized both of those solos, and I memorized the way he played the head on those solos, and then it was like off to the races with Sonny Rollins. Then I was a Sonny Rollins freak for a little while. I was you know, listening to you know, Sonny on Impulse was a favorite record. You know, Saxophone Colossus was a favorite record. The Bridge, I went through a huge period where I was listening to The Bridge with Jim Hall and Ben Riley and Bob Cranshaw, and so, you know, this is the problem: is my answer is going to be an hour long. If we really get into this, it's going to be impossible for me to stop, and I guess that's kind of the point. Is that now, you know, what was cool, what the cool thing, it was an advantage and a disadvantage when I was growing up, because we did not have the access to the music that is there now. I mean, not even one iota of what's available now on YouTube. Everything is free. Music is free on for better or for worse online. But you know, sort of the pitfall of that is that sometimes psychologically it gets devalued in listeners' minds, because I think that when I was 16 and 17 and going to the record store with Brad Meldau, we'd go with like $15 like that we made on a little gig that we played, and we blow it on LPs, and for $15 if you looked in the cutout bin, you could maybe get 3 records. You know, you could, you know, $5 a piece, and And so we'd go home with these records, but it was like one record at a time, or maybe two at the most. And we'd put those records on, and we'd listen to an entire side without talking. We put on a side. We'd say, oh, what's this record with Eric Dolphy and Booker Little? We've never heard that before. Let's put that on, and we'd listen to an entire side of Eric Dolphy and Booker Little, and have our minds blown. And the thing is that, because we didn't have because the actual amount of music was less, we were able to focus more on the music that we had, So we were able to really get all the juice out of every record that we were listening to in a very, very deep way. I used to listen to Miles Davis playing the head to the old standard "Supposin'," which is I think it's on the new Miles Davis Quintet. It's like he plays a. I can't remember his break exactly, but in any case, I remember being about 16 years old, and I had put that on cassette. It was when everyone had like their little Walkman, their cassette Walkman, back then. And I would listen to just Miles playing the head over and over and over again. I wouldn't even get to the solo. I'd listen to his head and his break, because I was so enamored of the way he played the head itself and his solo break. It just knocked me out. And so I became very obsessed just with this one part of this one song. And I guess that's what I'm, those are some places where I would suggest to start. I started with Charlie Parker. You don't have to start there, but that's certainly a good place to start. I would say that's a big part of where our language comes from now, and that would be my big advice for the day.
No, thank you for diving deep with that. We really appreciate it, man. This was awesome. Jeremy, I do have some closing thoughts, but I wanted to turn it back over to you first for yours.
Yeah. Once again, I just wanted to thank you, Joel, for coming in and working with us, man. This has been such a treat. And yeah, just to jump off of what you were just saying about listening, man. Sam and I were talking about this yesterday. When, like, nowadays, like, right, you have all this access to this music, but like, when we used to get a record, you would sit there and like listen to the whole thing, right? Yeah. Read the linear notes and like learn about them as people and learn about how the session all came together. Yep. There was a lot of information that you could pick up. Just like that wasn't really any part of the music. You got to learn about those people, and so. Yeah, once again, man, just thank you so much for, sitting down and talking. It's one thing that, to play and to listen to your records are one thing, but it's another thing to be able to kind of sit down and pick your brain a little bit. And it's certainly greatly appreciated.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jeremy. Anytime. Yeah. And just keep up what you're doing, man. It's you sound absolutely lovely, and I'm really happy we got a chance to connect today.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been such an inspiring afternoon. I really appreciate both of you for being part of these Young Lions Jazz Master virtual sessions. I wanted to remind everyone participating today or watching and listening in the future that you can see all of these wonderful upcoming sessions at clearwaterjazz.com at the Education and Outreach section. There's an upcoming schedule. There's the Zoom links to join live. Oftentimes there are session materials and links to our Spotify channel with recommended listening. Really cool stuff. Jeremy's going to be back with us tomorrow to finish off this week's conversation series with Jeff Vidal. Right, Jeremy? Yeah. So
tomorrow with Jeff.
Yeah, so it's gonna be this week's been awesome, and Joel had mentioned Elvin Jones. We've got Mark Feynman on drums, participating in our What I Love About series, and he's doing one on Elvin Jones on Monday, which is going to be really great. Mark always does a bang-up job with these. And you can see all of the upcoming, we're scheduled through the end of December and now getting into the new year with it. Really proud of this program, and can't thank Joel and Jeremy enough for being a special part of it now, this growing treasure that we have. And speaking of folks that are taking advantage of it, I want to give a shout out to some of the students, both at the university level and high school level in Florida, that I know are following along and making these a regular part of their curriculum, including Dr. Pete Carney at the State College of Florida in Bradenton, Brandon Robertson, jazz director down at Florida Gulf Coast University, Steve Harris at Seminole High School, Largo High School, Tarpon Springs High School, J.W. Mitchell High School, and we'll also give a shout out today to the Osceola County School of the Arts. They have just an incredible program there, who have been mainstays with our Young Lions stuff. So great job to all those band directors out there. And Jeremy and Joel, what can I say, man? Thanks again for being such a great part of this. On behalf of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, we want to thank all of our supporters, all of you following along, and everyone taking advantage of these resources. Keep playing. Stay safe out there. Be well. Keep being creative. Keep listening. And we'll see everybody back real soon.